All right. Got to watch some Twin Peaks. Had a cup of coffee. Hard to beat that. And it's fall. So great combo. This was and still is and probably always has been my favorite single episode of Twin Peaks. Not for storytelling reasons, which is rare for me. Normally, in fact, almost always, if I like something, it's because of the storytelling. In this case, this episode feels the most like Twin Peaks of all of them, which is ironic because the pilot was actually filmed in, Washington State, Snoqualmie, Washington State, whereas I'm pretty sure these episodes were all filmed on a lot in Los Angeles, but they're just so well done. I mean, it looks like Twin Peaks. It feels like Twin Peaks, and they have a lot of locations that you never see again. Jacques Renault's apartment. That's the investigation really heating up. You get they're looking for the Finleys' fine twine, Lydecker pet store, just some places where you just don't see the shooting range in the bottom of the sheriff's office. You never see that again, as far as I remember anyway. Just really interesting, and just a lot of locations, which probably filmed on a lot somewhere in LA. I mean, you can tell they mask a lot of things. One of the things about Twin Peaks that's one of its hallmarks is you see these trucks pulling logs. And the fact is, a lot of times you see that those are there to cover up things to make it, so they don't have to dress everything. In terms of storytelling, this episode has a lot to do with relationships, intimate relationships, and how Twin Peaks affects those relationships. I mean, I couldn't even go over all of them. There's so many. And when I say I mean romantic relationships between men and women, and what that has to do with Twin Peaks. And if you pay close attention, you'll see everything that happens almost is revolving around, that particular issue. So I'm going to take this time to talk about two things that I think are pretty interesting. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the relationship between, I might not be on names here. I'm kind of tired, so I don't do well with names and memory when I get tired, so I apologize for that. So Andy and Lucy. So they're looking for they're at the hotel. I'm sorry, not the big hotel Ben Horn's in, but the little motel. I forget the name of it. But they're going to go in to find the one-armed man who Cooper saw in the dream and they've seen in the hospital. So there's some connection between the third world and the first world. And Andy drops his gun. Okay. And this creates a little bit of a stir. And then Andy does a couple other things that shows that he's lacking confidence. But actually, what you find out is that he's distracted because of what's going on between him and Lucy. And later on, Cooper says, what's going on with those two? Now, we know, if you've seen the series, you know that she's pregnant and she thinks that this is Andy's kid. Although it could be Dick Tremaine's kid. We don't know, right? But at this point. But anyway, now, when they're in the basement at the shooting range, I assume it's the basement, Cooper has a conversation with Truman, Sheriff Truman. And Truman says, have you ever been married? And he says, no. And he talks about a woman. Now, we know that's probably Annie, later in, played by Heather, forget her last name. She was famous back then. She wasn't famous at this time. She became famous. She was in Austin Powers. But anyway. And so we learn a little bit about his backstory. I can't go into all the relationships, but there's a bunch, and you have Ben Horn and Catherine Martell and their relationship. Now, this is really interesting because this is very rare kind of storytelling because it's such a small detail. Andy goes from dropping his gun in an intense situation to basically saving Harry's life in the end. And that story arc, he's starting incompetent, but when he saves Harry's life, Lucy becomes reinterested in him, And so there's this correlation between his ability to focus and build up and focus and his relationship with Lucy. Well, with Cooper, what you see is, so Andy gets distracted when his relationship isn't working well. But when Cooper talks about his former relationship, what happens to him? He aims at the target and just nails it, right? And it shows he's real intense and real focused. So Cooper becomes more focused when he gets in these kind of situations, when he talks about things that hurt him and so forth. Really good. If you know anything about the series, you know in the end there'll be a little bit of a character inconsistency there when Annie shows up missing. But that's a whole nother ballgame. So this is just some very subtle and really good character arc stuff that I thought I'd mention. You may be very familiar with that. I'm hoping that this would be unique, but not all of these can be fully unique. Okay, now I want to get to the big thing here. I'm going to the best of my ability, attempt to flesh out what is going on with the Packard Sawmill. All right, and it's got a lot of details I'll probably miss, some names I'll forget. But if you've ever watched this series, you know that this issue is so complicated. Now, it's not complicated. It's actually very simple what happened. But the thing is the way they told the story is it just kind of bleeds out in bits and pieces. And you have to just put it all together. It's really good. And it's mysterious, but it's not that mysterious. They take something that's just a typical nighttime soap plot, very boilerplate, very run-of-the-mill, and turn it into something interesting by just giving you segments and have characters tell you about their background and so forth. So I'm just going to try to exposit some of that, okay? And so you get an idea of what's happening in this episode. Because I don't think I've seen anybody do that, really. I don't know that it'd be that hard to do, or maybe nobody's interested in doing that, but I am. I think I want to talk about it a little bit. So here's what we can put together as far as I can tell. Again, none of this is in season 3. This is not affected by season 3 in any way. The only thing that season 3 may affect here is Maddie Ferguson, who is the cousin of Laura Palmer, and she looks just like Laura Palmer. And all I'll say is that sort of drops the Donna's in Trouble storyline in favor of Maddie, and we all know what happens to Maddie. If you don't, watch and find out. But she's essentially a replacement for Laura. And a lot of people said they suspected that Laura wasn't dead because they thought this picked up on a storyline from a different movie, perhaps Vertigo, that kind of happens. Anyway. Okay. So Josie Packard was a prostitute for a crime syndicate in Japan. Somehow she made her way to the U.S. She was trusted to come to the U.S. to make money somehow. Probably prostitution in Seattle or something. And along the lines, she came across a man named Andrew Packard, who owns the Packard Sawmill. Now, his sister, Catherine Packard, becomes Catherine Martell. She's married to Pete Martell. So Josie is the widow. So what happened is Josie hires, or the crime syndicate hires, Hank Jennings, which is Norma Jennings' husband who's coming out of prison, okay, to murder Andrew Packard. Now, it's a little bit of, it's not clear, but it sounds like in his parole hearing, Hank hit Andrew Packard with a car by accident. And then later you come to find out that he was on a boat. Andrew Packard was on a boat that exploded. I don't know. It's an inconsistency, or it's not clear who he hit with the car, but he's in jail because he hit somebody with a car, it appears. So that's a little bit of maybe, there are several story inconsistencies in Twin Peaks, and that may be one of them. Anyway, he supposedly murdered and made it look like an accident and got a manslaughter charge by design on Andrew Packard, which we found out later was unsuccessful, but no one knew this at the time. So he is paid to go to jail and serve time. Not the greatest of plans. There should have been better ways of doing that. So what ends up happening is Josie inherits the sawmill. Well, this is a problem for, I told you I wouldn't get all the names down. The owner of the Great Northern Motel. Um, oh, man, I'm sorry. Donna Hayward's, not Donna. Oh, well, it doesn't work if I don't tell you the name, but he is the owner of One Eye Jacks. The name will come to me hopefully, and I'll mention it. And so he wants to start what's called the Ghostwood Estates. Okay, and the sawmill is on that land, and so in the pilot, he's trying to sell the idea of the Ghostwood Estates to these Norwegians. Okay, and the Norwegians leave Ben Horn. Okay, Ben Horn. So he's trying to sell it to them. Now, Ben Horn's lawyer is who? Leland Palmer, Laura's dad. All right. So he is trying to do that, but with the sawmill in the way, he can't get it done. And with Josie in the way, he can't get it done, right? Well, we're going to find out that he's got a little plan here. So him and Catherine are going to work together to burn down the mill for the Ghostwood Estates. Now, what's interesting about this is Catherine has been writing 2 ledgers. One ledger is for Josie to trick her into thinking that the mill's running fine. The other ledger is the actual way that the mill is operating, and it is not doing well by design. That's what Catherine wants. She also wants to burn down the mill and profit off this. Well, Ben Horn has a plan, and so he double, I guess what's it called? He stabs Catherine in the back, right? He basically goes to Josie behind her back and gets the ledger. Josie knows about the ledger. They've revealed that already in an episode. She knows there's 2 ledgers. And so it turns out that Ben and Josie are working together to get rid of Catherine. So Ben hires Leo Johnson, right, to burn the mill down. Well, so she invites Catherine to go. Leo invites Catherine to go there, and he's going to burn the mill with her in it. That's the idea anyway. Flimsy plan, to say the least. Well, apparently Catherine this entire time knows that Andrew is still alive. He was never killed. So that's a hidden fact that we learn later on in season 2, and is Twin Peaks at its worst. Probably it's not a very good storyline. It's an interesting twist, but it's not a great storyline. And then Catherine, of course, survives the mill being burnt, and so Ben Horn can't really go fully forward with the Ghostwood Estates. But there's one thing that might be confusing people. There's a scene where an insurance agent comes to Catherine Martell and wants her to sign because he thought it was odd the way the insurance was arranged. Turns out both Josie and Ben wanted to score big off Catherine's death, and pick up some money for killing her in a fire, which would have been an accident. Well, not an accident, but accident that she was there. So that scene is always confusing to people, or was confusing to me, I should say, anyway, because I was like, what's going on with this insurance agent and all that? Well, that's what's happening, is they're trying to do everything they can to maximize their gains in the middle of trying to get this Ghostwood project to go through. And so they do successfully burn down the mill, and I think that's pretty much everything. So if you've watched season 1 and you're confused, you should be. It was meant to not be all that clear. And you can see even as I'm piecing it all together, it's still not clear. It's not fully clear, which is a good thing, because it's not that good of a story, right? The story's not that good. But the storytelling was so good that they were able to take, a boilerplate idea and make it into something interesting. Plus, it makes Twin Peaks fit. It makes it feel like the real world. Even though this is a very absurd plan, in the real world, when you're watching these nighttime soaps back then, Falcon Crest, Dynasty, Dallas, that's what they all did. these kind of storylines. And so Twin Peaks is kind of riffing on that a little bit. You know, they're parodying it, and they're parodying it so much. Invitation to Love is a nighttime soap in the world of Twin Peaks that's parodying Twin Peaks. Fascinating that in Twin Peaks there's pairs of everything. Pairs of everything. If you didn't know that, and that's not unique, there's been a lot of analysis on this. If you go back and watch and really pay attention, you'll see there's just duplicates of everything. This whole concept of a twin is all over Twin Peaks. Really, really interesting. So there's never just one person. It's always two. Anyway, I hope that cleared up what was going on with the Martell and Packard estate and the sawmill. And I hope it didn't ruin it for you if you've always thought that storyline was interesting and now maybe it's a little bit cut and dry. But that is, I think, as far as I can tell it in a nutshell. Anyway, I'm loving Twin Peaks. Only 3 more episodes left, but I am enjoying this quite a bit. Have a good one.